time once again for another Two Women Talking. It is I, Liana, tomboy, and Song W. Erickson, girly girl and author of Calidus Chronicles Volume 1, available on Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Shameless plug, shameless plug. Today, we're doing something different. We are not going to talk pop culture. We are going to talk culture. We have no idea how this is going to go, but we decided to try it. So we're going to talk about I'll come up with a sizzle title later. I don't quite know what to call this. Is going to be accurate, but we're going to talk about the stuff that comes with being a tomboy and being a girly girl. Because more and more I've realized you can't win no matter what area of it. There's somebody saying you're some kind of traitor to women. Have you found the same thing?
Yes, it's this thing where, and I think people just, especially nowadays, they want things to be like in a comfortable middle. And it's like, if you're anything other, you know that U2 song Numb?
Yeah. It's actually one of my favorite U2 songs.
I actually remember you referencing it in a video a long time
Yeah.
ago. And I felt like you actually got it, because I've seen people say that music video is so random and whatever. And I'm like, no, it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, it's the
That
world
music,
screaming at the edge. Yeah.
exactly. But it's like, I feel like people want you to be that song.
Yeah.
And, it's so weird having a noun as a name. Especially when I use a lot. But it's like people want you to be kind of numb. They want you to just kind of go along because they don't understand outliers. And it makes them uncomfortable, I think, because they don't know what to do about it. And it's like, if you're a tomboy or you're a girly girl, you're still outside of the numb medium.
Well, that's interesting. Anything that is a clear state, you're suggesting is somehow a threat to what I call the live, laugh, love pillow crowd.
Exactly. Because it's like there is that, a certain type of femininity that is the live, laugh, love, where it's sometimes you get dressed up, but there's also a lot of yoga leggings, and sometimes you put in some effort and there's some minimum effort that most people don't appreciate anyway. But it's not the same as, if I may be so bold to use myself, it's not the same as lacing up a corset and putting on tights and putting on a dress and petticoats and everything like I do every day. It's normal, and it's, dare I say, kind of basic.
No, that you're describing the like this basic suburban soccer mom.
Yeah.
Thing.
Well, it's like, so I've been thinking a lot recently about, and I mentioned this in a previous Two Women Talking. Back in like 2015, Dita Von Teese went as a normal woman for Halloween with like the skinny jeans and the brown wig. And her friends were like, but that's how I dress. And I'm like, how are you friends with Dita Von Teese and you don't realize you're extremely basic?
Because that's why it's called basic. It's the basic model, right? It's the thing. I think I understand why people give up, though, because I was thinking about this in preparation for the show. Right? Sorry, do you have something to say?
No, go on.
Yeah. Because I think about when I was younger, especially around that 7th, 8th grade, when gender norms really start to matter. And then going into high school, you are so punished for not being, factory default setting. And so I think a lot of girls and a lot of boys, but this particular topic is girls. If you want boys, watch Manly Monday. But a lot of girls, they do conform because that's survival. The problem is all that conformity is the exact opposite of what you need to start a business or build anything or basically be a being that has some agency in the world.
And how can you figure out who you are, especially at that time when you're supposed to be figuring out who you are? How can you find out who you are if you're conforming to everyone else.
See, I don't think that's an age to figure out who you are anymore. I think everything that's going on in the world indicates that that's not what adults want for kids now. They want kids to, well, one, make it to 21 where they're not their problem anymore. They, they're not a teen suicide statistic anymore. So everything's fine, dog.
Yeah.
But also, it's like childhood and adolescence is now training for adulthood instead of its own developmental stage. And so, 11-year-olds are stressing about what college they're going to get into. You can't form a sense of self when you're under when you're under that pressure. And I was actually in a conversation just last night where somebody was doing the kids have no resilience these days thing.
I wonder why.
Well, he's a parent and he's a very good parent.
Yeah.
And what he was saying wasn't wrong, but the ability to fail, the structural societal ability to fail and get back up again and try again was starting to be eliminated when I was in school. And my understanding is it's only gotten worse.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of rebellion, the costs are so high. I totally understand why people, subsume their identity to the collective and then end up miserable and not knowing why. I just read one of those, happiness researchers. And what I liked about this particular guy is he was totally data driven. Every time somebody speculated on a reason why women are just across the board less happy, like they have more markers of unhappiness, so greater levels of depression and anxiety and all that stuff, but their reported levels of happiness are the same. And every explanation for it that someone gave, this guy was like, the data doesn't show that, right? Because they kept trying to connect it to motherhood and how difficult, but how rewarding motherhood is. And he was like, yeah, but women who aren't mothers, the reporting is the same for women who are. It's not motherhood.
Mm-hmm.
And what one person suggested, and he couldn't disprove with data, was that women actually are struggling, but the expectation is they say they're satisfied. But they also found that women don't tend to have the same ambitions as men. So what they hope to get out of life is lower. And so they say, I'm doing okay at a lower bar. And this is horrifying to me. What do you think about that idea?
I'm not really sure. Because it's like, yeah, it makes sense. That idea that, there is a lower bar and there's less ambition. And I don't know.
Because
Sorry.
we sort of took away, I mean, we talk a lot about the destruction of masculine rite of passages, right? And there's reason. That's real. But when you think about it, they've demonized all the, for lack of a better term, female power fantasy. Because to me, to use, one of your more preferred tropes, the whole idea of a woman going to a ball and catching the eye of this wonderful, handsome prince and him sweeping her, that is a female power fantasy.
Absolutely. It's
yeah.
This there is, like you said, it's this power to walk into the room and turn heads.
Yeah.
And I think we've been women shouldn't care about what men think. You shouldn't do anything for a man. And I'm like, okay, but sometimes it's fun.
Yeah,
and it is a very uniquely feminine power to have that. I hate to say this, but this almost control over men. Because,
Yeah.
an interesting thing about, red pill talking points is it's so much of it is don't be distracted by women. Don't let women control you. And I'm not saying a woman should try to control a man,
Mm-hmm.
but having that power of distraction, being able to turn ahead with just a look. There's a point in Memoirs of a Geisha
Mm-hmm.
where the main character's mentor says a true geisha can stop a man in his tracks with just a look. And in the movie, I believe what they did was she looks at a bike messenger and he just hits the curb and
Mm-hmm.
goes flying over his handlebars. And her teacher is like, "You are ready."
Mm-hmm.
And it's like they're comedic effect, but it's like, yeah, that's a power fantasy.
Mm-hmm.
Being able to do that. And I think we've lost that a bit.
Well, I think they've gone out of their way to make girls feel ashamed of seeing, like, the way it's taught, right? That's patriarchy, right? Women
It's
being
there's shame
defined
to
by men.
yeah, there's a shame to wanting male attention.
Yeah, well, there's a shame to wanting attention at all from men, from women, from the world, from and that's something that really, really bothers me, right? As
Mhm.
somebody who, yeah, I can perform it, but do I feel girly? No. But I saw the way beautiful women are treated in media, not by the audiences, but by techs and lighting guys and camera operators, and they're treated like they're evil or subhuman because, oh, you want
Mhm.
attention. And
Mhm.
there were times I'm like, what's wrong with wanting attention as someone who's an introvert and uses it as a means to an end, not something that's valuable in itself? Nothing's wrong with wanting attention. Human beings are social creatures. There's a part of our brain that does determine our worth based on how we fit in the world.
Yeah.
And so telling, with men, if a guy gets up and makes a lot of noise and stamps his feet and rah, 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 well, then he probably gets a job on CNN or Fox News, right? There are so many just flagrant attention seekers that are men.
Mhm.
There's a reason there's way more really successful male influencers outside of mommy blogs and makeup tutorials than there are women, because whenever women seek attention, oh, you're an attention whore.
But I mean, even looking at like, the sphere of influencers
Yeah.
on social media it's, anytime there's any new there was recently a woman on TikTok who like she was able to buy a house with the money she made
Mm-hmm.
being a social media influencer. And she wasn't one of the super glamorous ones or the super sexy ones.
Yeah.
And people were like, "Oh, well, she should get a real job." And it's
Yeah.
like,
Like, that's not work.
okay, look, there is a reason I haven't started posting promotional reels to Instagram for my book because they're not easy.
They're
And it's
not,
like,
and Instagram's a hellhole.
yeah. And like, well, I have terrible lighting in my room. So it's like, even if I could figure out what to say, it's like
But
recording
that's the thing. They don't, the stuff that works on even YouTube,
Mhm.
just regular people, the authenticity. Instagram tears that apart.
Yeah, no, it has to be a carefully constructed image.
Yeah. And who has the freaking time for that? I don't. It
I wish I
just,
did.
well, that's the thing, right? You gotta, there's a reason so many people started being successful on social media after they lost their day job and was like, well, I got nothing else. I'm gonna go whole hog into this because they can put in the time.
Yeah, look, I've actually started to see a romanticization of the idea of quarantine, and
Yeah.
it's been stuff like, remember when we were all stuck at home and we were like baking bread and learning how to craft and learning how life should be. And I'm like, yeah, I saw the tweet like 2 days after. I was like, I wonder when we're going to start to see the romanticization. And it's like, looking back, I see all these people who did establish crafting and creation businesses and built followings
Hmm.
on during the quarantine, and like I wish I had used my quarantine better. I wish.
I
But
was I was stupid busy during quarantine because I already worked from home. So I
yeah,
was actually I don't get FOMO, but I
yeah.
used to bake bread. I have not had time to bake bread since 2019, which
I,
was
and it,
before the quarantine.
and it's like, I love baking bread. I
Mhm.
love doing those things. Unfortunately, I just was not in a position where I could do that, because it's
Yeah,
like we moved in the middle of quarantine to a place I didn't know, and the place
right.
we lived, the condo we were renting was awful.
Hmm.
Just, oh God, it was a country western vibe. It was
Oh, oh dear. Oh dear. But yeah,
yeah.
I mean that you say I enjoy baking bread. People
Mhm.
judge you. You know,
Yeah.
I got so sick of the freaking stank face when in groups of women when I said
Mhm.
I liked video games. And you know, post quarantine, now they're like, "Oh yeah, video games are great. I love Legend of Zelda. I love Animal Crossing and all that stuff." It's like,
There was a TikTok I saw after The Last of Us came out, where this woman was like, "Gamers, you've been hiding that you actually have these great stories." And
yeah,
I'm like, I hate your
yeah,
guts.
yeah. It all of a sudden, when there weren't other things and now it was doing something for them, suddenly it's great. And the problem is, of course, when they hire women for jobs covering video games, they don't actually hire. This is going to be the definition of the best person
Mhm.
is completely different with major media companies than it is among gamers. Gamers actually do, first and foremost, want women who know about games. But
Mhm.
the media companies hire women they think male gamers want to fuck.
And
And
even I knew that from the first time I started seeing like nerd media coverage. I remember, I don't even remember what it was. It was just this journalist, air quotes, in an Emma Frost costume at a
yeah,
con, who was interviewing.
I think I know who that is. Okay,
And I'm
don't
like,
name names. Oh no.
and I'm, this was like 10, 12 years ago.
Yeah,
So I
yeah,
don't know.
yeah, yeah.
But I'm like, I do not relate to you. Not just because you're pretty and you're dressed up and everything, but you don't feel real to me.
And if it
Like,
is who I'm thinking of, she legit was into that stuff, but not, not on a deep level.
mhm.
Um,
And
I
I'm sure there is a lot of that, because it's like, if you're going to be in that business, you have to be able to say, "Oh yeah, I've read this. I know this character and that." But there's also that, oh gosh, I'm trying to remember the quote, and it's just like, "Oh, it, you came to the darkness. I was born in the darkness," or whatever
right.
that Bane quote
Yeah.
is.
Yeah. Well,
And it's,
see, it's all the assumptions,
yeah.
right? The assumption is that, oh, women, well, straight women anyway, don't like this stuff. So we can't expect anyone to be really good at it. And then this weird thing happens. And this is one of the downside of being a tomboy moments
Mhm.
is there is a vibe with gamers. They test, you test back. Okay, you're one of us. Cool, let's play. But
And I mean, even I've had a couple experiences with that, where it's like I remember telling a coworker, "Oh yeah, my favorite comic book character is, or my favorite superhero is Spider-Man,"
Right.
and his expression was just like, "Oh, great, she's seen the movies."
Right.
And I'm like, for these reasons that were
Right.
all like comic book specific. And then he just lit up and he's like,
Yep.
okay, she's legit. And
Yep.
like after that, we would talk about geek stuff
Yeah.
until he went on his mission.
Right.
So,
But then, with these companies, and I applied to pretty much every major video game website out there. I never even got an interview based on a cold application. And I guarantee you they looked me up. And I heard this from a few people. You're too aggressive. Like, this is not only video games. This is journalism. No one would criticize a political reporter for being aggressive, but the people who do the hiring are threatened by, I hate to say strong women, but women who speak their mind.
and I think
Women who act like men.
yeah,
Let's put it that way.
and I think part of that is because it does fall into that this is different, this is not familiar. Yep. I don't know how to handle this.
Well, and the truth is, a lot of these guys, when you push them, they really can't defend their thesis. They can't defend their position. They are so used to being in an echo chamber. Because let's face it, the major gaming websites came about because a guy started a website when anybody could, when the internet was relatively new, and he hired all his friends because, he didn't have to pay them right away. And if you knew the right people at the right time, you're doing really well right now. But there's a huge amount of imposter syndrome. And I have had the guys who are women in gaming, we need more women in gaming. When I tell them my opinions about Lara Croft, they go, I 100% disagree, and go on this whole thing. Like, this is exactly what you claim men are not supposed to do. You're doing it. No wonder you think all men do this.
Yeah.
And I found, but they would rather hire a woman, but it's exactly like you said, right? She can't be too pretty. She can't be too glamorous because then she's too difficult too, as well. Right? Then if you're not in basic mode with danger hair, you're too difficult.
And the moment you become too glamorous, then you are the dreaded high maintenance.
High maintenance is the other one. Yeah. Meanwhile,
that is an insult. Let's be honest, that phrase is an insult.
Of course it's an insult.
Yeah.
Of course it's an insult. And guys sometimes call other guys that, but the bar is much higher to be labeled high maintenance for men. I mean, the other thing that drives me crazy, the other stereotype, and this is one that hits girly girls more, just because it's more of a quote unquote traditional gender role, is the idea of the woman schemer or the woman temptress, that if a man behaves badly and there's a woman in his life, people blame the woman.
Yeah.
That drives me batshit crazy.
Here's the thing. I like the female schemer because I think it's a fascinating look at how women could have power without being in the public light, really.
But it's assumed, right?
Yeah.
I mean, the ones that come to mind, and they're both, mixed race women, but Jada Pinkett Smith and Meghan Markle, they both get blamed when their husband either shoots their mouth off or smacks Chris Rock. And you know as well as I do, no woman thinks, oh, I'm going to tell him, are you going to do something about this? And he's going to haul off and wail on the guy. That's not the way you think.
I mean, the one thing that doesn't help that in the Chris Rock case is we saw Will Smith laugh at the joke. Yeah, and then suddenly
I guarantee you she did not say, go smack him in the face.
No, but I have a feeling he looked over, saw her expression, and thought, oh, I need to do something about this.
And that's what he decided to do. Like, that is not her fault.
No.
And Meghan Markle, just that one surprises me. Because, I mean, she was here on Suits for many, many years. Before she married Prince Harry, she was a nice girl. And that's pretty much it. She wasn't known as terribly ambitious or anything like that. And now she's this, oh, she tore the family apart. Like, how? She doesn't have that kind of schlep. We all saw her on Suits. She's not that good an actress.
I think, especially since it's Diana's sons, I think people want this fairy tale, essentially, of, them being these close brothers, because like that's one of the big things we saw in the media. It was like, oh, they were so close, and then she showed up and she tore them apart. And it's like, well, look, if that happened, there was probably friction to begin with.
Well, what makes more sense? That their mother dying young messed them both up, not in the same ways. And so there is, as you say, friction, or everything was great until Meghan
Fire Nation attacked.
Yeah, like that doesn't make any sense on any planet. But people they default to the stereotypes, and they don't realize that. And I know this as somebody who does not girl well. One of the things I have to keep in mind with women is that a lot of women would rather die than cause conflict.
Oh yes.
Yeah.
It's we are socialized to be accommodating.
Right.
To not take up space, to not draw attention to ourselves. And this, another red pill talking point, is, women are naturally obedient, which like that tells me nothing, because then why throughout history and throughout mythology is it always the woman causing trouble and breaking the rules? Why was it Eve that ate the apple? Why was it Pandora that opened the box?
Right.
Why are there so many scriptures specifically telling women to behave? We're not naturally inclined to be obedient. Now we tend to be craftier rather than
what choice does anyone, well, the choice I made, but go on, because this is another rant.
It's we tend to be more subtle, but this and then it gets taken advantage of, where it's like, so we're socialized to be quiet and accommodating, and then we put up with shit.
Yep.
And we get to a point where it's terrifying to step up and enforce our boundaries, especially when oftentimes something ends up going wrong.
Because we suck at boundaries as a culture.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
So, and it's just like, you try so hard to appease people, and especially coming from a religious background like I do, it's try not to cause trouble, try not to, and it's especially for me, being such a diva, it's like this constant push and pull. I want attention. Oh my God, please look at me. What do I have to do to make people look at me? Oh God, but I don't want to cause any controversy.
Right.
And it's especially nowadays where it's like, oh my God, I don't want to get canceled.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's like, okay, but why can't I get more attention? Like, am I cursed? Is that why I can't get more followers anywhere?
Well, the truth is that the only thing that feeds the algorithm now is drama.
Yeah.
You must have the right people hate you for the right people to like you, or for anyone to like you. Yeah. And that becomes, I asked the head of Twitch about this problem, and his answer was not great recently. because they're aware. They're aware, and it's very sad. And let me tell this whole story because it shows the what it's like being a tomboy when people expect all girls to be sort of girly girls,
Yeah,
and that sort of basic
you've
thing.
been telling little bits about this encounter. I
Yeah.
want to hear the story.
So there was a Twitch event a few Saturdays ago, and there was an opportunity to ask questions of the head of Twitch. I think his name's Dan Clancy. Don't remember. He made a joke about Tom Clancy and a relative, so I assume his last name's Clancy. But he looks a bit like Richard Branson. I got a picture with him. It's kind of funny that I don't know his name because I enjoyed talking to the head of marketing much more. She seemed a lot more on the ball and giving of shits. So I asked, I want more women streaming, but they see what happens to me with much bigger Twitch streamers using smaller streamers as target practice. And they're terrified. They see it happening to me. They're like, I can't handle that.
Mm-hmm.
No, I'm not strong like her. I'm not resilient like her. I can't. And so they don't try. And we're losing some really great voices that could add a lot. And it's basically, yes, well, the big problem is a lot of it doesn't happen on Twitch. And that's bullshit. That's
Yeah,
a
no.
bullshit answer. I told the guy privately that all you had to do is mean that, within fair commentary boundaries, you cannot use someone's, a channel, somebody of a channel under a certain size, you cannot use their footage without their permission. You can't use their likeness. YouTube does that.
It's not even just that, but it's the way so many large Twitch streamers, and someone I know you have a specific issue, will walk away from a long stream and leave someone else's video playing.
Yeah.
Or they'll watch an entire video that someone put a lot of effort into.
And just take pot shots at it.
Yeah. It's just the way taking for granted someone else's work, especially when you claim you're on the side of the working class.
Yeah.
Just it's so disrespectful. And it's
it's not just disrespectful. Let's face it. If a guy gets goofed on, as Howard Stern would say, that is seen as a very different thing than a woman being mocked.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not saying it's better or worse. I know a lot of guys who can't, they are so blocked off from their feelings that hurts, that they end up, dying young in some cases, but having really severe mental health issues, even if, they don't unalive by, medical neglect. But they can't admit it hurts. But that's one thing. When it happens to a woman, it's treated as a fate worse than death. Because here's what happened after I asked that question. It was all, oh, very great question. Oh yeah, that's really, really great. Guy didn't give a shit. But, and it was very clear, like I'm talking to him afterwards and he's literally looking around the room while I'm talking to him. It's like, oh, everybody's not watching you, buddy. So now I know what you really think. Interesting. But men were coming up to me and saying, I'm so sorry that happened to you. No one should have to go through that. And that was not my point.
Yeah.
I mean, I drove that dude off. He blocked me on Twitter, then unblocked me, took more pot shots. I gave back. He blocked me again, then quietly unblocked me like a week later. I ran him off.
Mm-hmm.
They were treating it like a fate worse than death, and it wasn't. And that's the whole problem, because, a woman gets made fun, a man gets made fun of, it happens, right? I just find that if a woman gets poorly treated, people have to do something about it. And that's awful. When I was a games journalist, this was a big problem, because every so often people get pissed off. It's sometimes fair. It's sometimes not fair. but the men around you freak the fuck out. Like, it is something that consumes the entire office. And I can't stand that, because when a guy writes an article that's controversial, and he gets dunked on, everybody's like, ha ha ha, oh, you really pissed him off. With women, it's like, we have to defend her, we have to say something, we have to stand up for women, and that's the worst damn thing you can do. It's always how the best thing you can do when someone, if you think they're going through a hard time, is ask them, how do you want to handle this? And follow their lead. But that doesn't happen. All the men in the vicinity, shouldn't say all, most, jump to prove they are great allies, and they make it worse. We keep dogging on The Last of Us too, but that was a shining example of what was her name? Laura Bailey. Got harassed, and she didn't deserve it. She didn't write the character of Abby. She didn't model the character of Abby. She didn't set the plot where
No,
Abby's
it was a
involved.
job.
She reads the script and she goes home. And Laura Bailey's a very reliable voice actor, and she got harassed by a bunch of people. Instead of going, yeah, this is bullshit, it was this whole Druckmann gets up there and grandstands, and we do not condone harassment. This is wrong. And it's like, okay, can we talk about the shit that voice actors take, male actors take when people are upset with them? Do people go riding? Does the cavalry come in there? We do not condone harassment. No. It's like, well, you're a public figure. This is fair comment. Walk it off. It makes it worse because the double standard is so obvious, and because gamer boys, are not ideals of their gender. And I say this as somebody who thinks that's wrong. I would rather hang out with gamer dudes any day of the week and twice on Sunday, because there's more time to play games on Sunday. I would rather hang out with gamer dudes other than, I don't know, the more ideal guy. But let's face it, that's not the messaging society gives them.
No.
And so they don't benefit from the benefits of, I'm going to say it, patriarchal social norms. And yet they see women getting defended. And I've recently found out that there's a fairly large portion of gamer guys who have rescue fantasies. Have you heard of this, rescue fantasies?
Are we talking about rescuing a girl or being rescued?
No, being rescued. There's apparently a subsection of anime that's about guys being rescued by powerful women.
It's Shinji and Asuka.
Is that it?
That's probably not the main thing, but it's like Shinji was a limp noodle. Asuka and Rei were the ones who actually got anything done.
Okay.
So it's like that was the first thing I thought of. But I mean, Asuka is also mean.
But there are guys who quietly want to be saved. And quite frankly, when you think about the gender roles in fiction, that is sort of, being saved by a good woman. Usually it's spiritually or morally, but it's a little love and he'll change trope.
Yeah.
And we treat that
so
as
are they talking about are we talking about like a physical rescue, or that she'll make me better?
I haven't asked too many questions, because obviously, this is a very tender subject.
Yeah.
And it sort of comes up, and I tend to go, all right, that's cool. Like, I get it. And that tends to be where it's left. But I do get the sense that some of it is physical rescue. I mean, these are not physically strong guys, right? And I mean, maybe they tell me that because I'm me. But I think that's cool, and it's refreshing, and the fact that guys feel like they're supposed to go, oh, I like big tits and this and the next thing. And that's okay to say, but something that's gentler and more. I think it's I would feel more comfortable around a guy who was about that. The fact that that's seen as shameful is the other side of the wedge that I get caught up in.
I mean, another
Face
great
it.
example of that is actually Steve Trevor and Wonder Woman.
Yeah. Oh my God. I love the Brave and the Bold episode with Steve Trevor. With Steve Trevor and Batman.
Oh yeah.
I love that. When Steve Trevor's just waiting around to be rescued. Hello, Angel. You know, I think it's Ted McGinley who does the voice. That episode is so great. It's so good. And I think it's awesome, but it's this, like, let's face it, what do you call guys that have that urge? Little bitches, right?
Yeah.
What do you call women like me? Massive bitches. And that's why I don't like the word.
Oh, and if you're me, you get it called a snooty bitch.
Oh, is that it? And see, that's why I don't like the word bitch. It's just so cheap. It's so easy. You know, it's like when everything was that's gay in the 80s and 90s. It's a thoughtless insult that nobody thinks about what they're really saying. And it is just this shutdown tactic for people because everybody knows it's bad. And there's been attempts to reclaim the word bitch. Gay men. I don't think they've worked. Just knowing how you're treated when you get labeled a bitch. It's people are allowed to treat you any way they want. You're no longer a human being because you're bitchy.
Yeah.
It's why Megan Thee Stallion wasn't believed when Tory Lanez shot her, and we can say definitively he was convicted now. You know, it's just this thing that gets put on people who are not gender typical, but it sounds like it's also put on people who are, you know, the epitome of what people are supposed to be. It's everyone's a bitch. Everyone's a bitch. And if everyone is, then what's the relevance of the word? It's just a shutdown thing. You're a bitch. Nobody likes you. Go off somewhere and die.
It's easy.